Hi there. Welcome to the Introduction to FP2 video tutorial. This tutorial is intended to give new or previous FP2 users an orientation on the basic features of the new FP2 system. In this tutorial, we'll cover logging into FP2, the FP2 components, using the home page, using list windows, and using record windows. Section 1. Logging into FP2. Double-click on the FP2 application to start the program. A login screen will appear. Select your username and enter your password from the user list. If you have not used FP2 before, select the Fire Chief user and enter the password supplied with your installation package. Section 2. FP2 Components. The FP2 window is made up of several different components. Some or all of these components are usually visible when you're working with FP2. We'll be referring to these components at various times throughout the tutorial, so let's identify them now. The menu bar. The menu bar is a gray bar with text headings that appears along the top of the FP2 window. Menu bar options are generally system level or utility settings that control how FP2 functions. The toolbar. The toolbar contains a row or column of icons that are shortcuts to the various FP2 modules. In user settings, you can determine the size of the icons and the location of the toolbar. Workspace. The gray area in the FP2 window is the workspace, the area where all the other FP2 windows appear. Windows. Windows appear when you open the different FP2 modules. There are several different kinds of windows in FP2, but all of them have the same basic features. List windows. List windows in FP2 are windows with a green background and a list of records at the bottom or the right side. They are used to search for individual records in FP2 and to generate reports. Record windows. Record windows are opened by double-clicking on items in list windows. They are usually beige and contain multiple tabs. Edit list windows. Edit list windows are used when editing the contents of blue lists in FP2 and can be accessed by clicking on the Edit List button next to each blue list. The Action menu is a horizontal gray bar with buttons on it that appears at the top of each window. It contains commands specific to that window, including Cancel Save, Record Navigation Controls, Record Editing Options, and Print commands. Tabs. Most windows contain several tabs, which are used to increase the amount of information displayed on a window and to organize that information into different sections that relate to the record. Section 3. Using the home page. While there are several different ways to open modules in FP2, the easiest is probably the home page. This window shows a map of all the different modules in your FP2 system, along with other available modules. The modules in the home page are organized by the type of records that they contain. Clicking on any of the module buttons will open the appropriate list window. Section 4. Using list windows. In FP2, each module is separated into two different windows. A list window, which allows you to search for records in the module, and a record window, which displays all the information about that record. I'm going to show you how the list windows work using the Properties module. Clicking on the Properties button in the toolbar or the home page will bring up the Properties list window. Every list window in FP2 has the same basic components. If you understand how one works, you should be able to use all of them. At the top of each list window is the list window title and a number, which shows how many records are currently displayed in the list. Action bar. Under the window title is the action bar. The action bar on list windows allows you to cancel and save changes, create new records, use utility actions, and print certain records. Search parameters. Each list window has a number of search parameters on it. Search parameters are used to find records in FP2. You can use multiple search parameters if you need to. Sometimes a list window has a number of different tabs, all containing different search parameters. It's important to remember that all the search information from all the tabs is used each time you run a search. Let's do a sample search. I'm going to select station 10 from the station parameter drop-down list. then hit the Build List button to run my search. The Build List button is used on all list windows in FP2 to generate search results. Record lists. Once I run a search, all records that match my search parameters will appear in the List section of the window, and I'll see the number of search results in the window title at the top. If you want to remove the search parameters and just work with the list itself, all you have to do is click on the Hide Parameters button. Click the Show Parameters button in the action bar to bring the search parameters back. All record lists in FP2 work the same way. You can resort the items on the record list by clicking on any of the list headers, or reverse the sort by clicking again. You can expand or reduce the size of the columns by clicking on the edge of the columns and dragging, much like a spreadsheet. You can also open each record by double-clicking on the record in the list window. If you want to select multiple records, you can left-click and drag, or hold Control-click to select a number of individual records. List display. The list itself can also be modified. Right-clicking on the list headers will bring up a set of column options that can be turned on and off to display different information on the street list. Left-clicking and dragging column headers will allow you to reorganize the columns. Under the list is a drop-down that allows you to save your list display settings as a list template. Templates can either be public or private, and you can right-click on the template list to set a template as the default in this list window. On the right side of the list, there's a vertical row of buttons. The list buttons allow you to add new records, delete records, print off the list itself, print reports about the records currently showing on the list, export information from the list items into a spreadsheet, build a graph, or modify your sorting options. These options might not all be available from every list window. For example, the delete button and build graph buttons aren't available in the property list window. Saved searches. One of the really useful things you can do in a list window is to create a saved search. A saved search allows you to enter a set of search parameters and then quickly rerun the search later by selecting the saved search from the saved search list. Let's set up a saved search now. I've already run a search for all the property records assigned to Station 10. Now I can save that search by going to my saved search list and hitting the Add a New Saved Search button. I'll give it a name. We'll call it Station 10 Properties. And then I'll use the green check mark to save the changes to the search. Now that we've saved the search, we can rerun the search at any time when we come back into this window by selecting it from the Save Search drop-down list. I'll close the Properties window, come back to the Properties window, open the Save Search drop-down list, and run my Save Search automatically by selecting it. Default searches. Now that we have saved searches, you can use them as default searches on this window. Rather than running the search manually when we come in here, we can select the search from this drop-down list, right-click on the list window, and set it as the default search. Now, that search will run automatically as soon as this window is opened. So when we close the Properties window, what we can see when we reopen it is that the Station 10 Properties search is run automatically. In addition to setting a default search, we can also set the default size and position for each window when it opens. For example, if I wanted my current properties list window to take up less space on my screen, I could resize it, right-click on it, and select Save Window Size and Position. Now, when I close and reopen the window, it always reappears in exactly the same size and position as when I saved it. These selections are saved individually for each user, so different users can have different views and positions. Using the Startup tab in the File Preferences menu, along with the default searches and default locations, allows each user to build their own user interface, determining which modules, searches, and window locations they want. Section 5. Using record windows. In FP2, record windows are where you enter and view specific information. You can create new records in most modules by hitting the Add Record button from the Record List buttons. Existing records can be opened by double-clicking on them in the list window. Record fields. Information in record windows is generally entered in a variety of different types of record fields. Most record fields have a tooltip, which will tell you a little more about the kind of information that's intended to be recorded in that field. There are generally 4 types of fields that are used in record windows. Text fields. Text or number fields appear as white boxes, which you can type information into. Often a record field will have gray text in it that describes what sort of information the field is meant to store. This text will disappear when you start typing. Date fields. Date fields in FP2 have a small calendar button next to them. You can type the date into the field, or click on the calendar button to select a date. Remember, if the date you want to enter is the current year and current month, all you have to do is enter the day or the day in the month, and FP2 will fill in the rest of the information for you. List fields. Blue list fields are pre-populated. This ensures that the data is entered consistently in all places in the program. There are several things to remember about list fields. The first thing to remember is that you can select the list and then start typing. FP2 will automatically go to the first match that it can find in the list. You can even hit the backspace key and start over. When the list is selected, you can also use the up and down arrows on the keyboard to navigate between list items. The next thing to remember is that most lists are editable. Clicking on the Edit List button, which looks like an ellipsis next to the list, brings you into an Edit List window where you can add, remove, or reorganize the items on the list. We'll talk more about list editing later, as there are a number of things about that you need to learn. The final important thing about lists to remember is that if you select an item from a list, the item on that list is attached to that record. That means if you change the list item in the future, it will change that information on all records that it's attached to. So change list items with care. The same thing applies to deleting list items, although FP2 generally has some breaks on that. Checkboxes. Checkboxes are simple yes/no indicators. They're pretty straightforward. Tabs. Record windows use tabs and subtabs to organize things, similar to list windows. Each tab will sometimes have several subtabs. List tabs. List tabs are tabs that display lists of records. Sometimes these are records that you create right in the tab, but sometimes they display information from other parts of the program. Clicking on a record in a list tab will either display the record details at the bottom of the tab, if the record information is created right there, or they'll open a new window with the record from another module. In this case, we're opening an incident report attached to the property record. List tabs that display information from other modules will have a date range parameter at the bottom. Usually, these tabs will only display information from the current year, but the date range parameter can be used to show more or less information. Links tab. The Links tab appears in most record windows in FP2 and allows you to attach external files, like image files or Word documents, to records in FP2. You can easily attach multiple pictures to a file by reducing the size of FP2, selecting the picture files, and dragging them into the gray area on the Pictures tab. Alternatively, you can copy-paste the files into the Pictures tab or use the Add button to select them manually. Other links can be added by using the Add button and then selecting a specific file. Saving changes. When you have unsaved changes in a record window, the Cancel and Save buttons on the action bar will light up. You won't be able to close the window until you either save your changes or cancel the changes and revert to the previous save. Thank you for watching the Introduction to FP2 tutorial. We'll continue the next tutorial with a more detailed look at how to use FP2 to customize a user interface with setting search and window defaults for each individual user.